Hey, Death by Lightning, episode 2. So last time we talked about episode 1, and we talked about some of the the things that I found that were not entirely accurate. We also just talked generally. We can definitely talk generally more, but we're just going to talk about inaccuracies that I noticed. Quick reminder that this show is on Netflix. It's directed by Matt Ross. Has some great actors in it, and it does a very good job describing the story of James Garfield. And it's based off the book Destiny of the Republic. Another big thing I want to point out here is these are just some accuracies I noticed. I don't care that much that they put a lot of these in. Obviously, they got to make it entertaining. Otherwise, only someone like me would enjoy it. So this is not me saying, this is awful, they should have gotten this right. I totally get it. But I just want to go over some of it with you. So, Party Fateful. So this is going into basically how Garfield is going to win the election. So the episode kind of starts off with his farm in a way. So Garfield's farm, Lucretia's going to be told, hey, Garfield just won the election. And she finds out from random people. This is not what happens. What actually happens is Garfield telegrams her almost immediately and tells her, hey, do you approve of, me becoming president? And she does say yes. So this is not like, this is probably more for creative liberties, but he does not just, say like, oh, this is not, I'm doing this without telling you. So the other thing is, Arthur and Conkling meet in the background. Let's see if I can find a good photo of them. Yes, they meet in a private room. Conkling's like getting his beard trimmed or whatever. That is not how it happened. They actually met in the halls. Arthur is offered the position of vice president, and he goes to Conkling immediately to ask for his sort of approval. And Conkling basically says, like, no, you should not be doing this. You should be declining it if you to save grace for the Grant part of the party. And Arthur is kind of upset about this because he finds this a huge. He has never been elected to a position in his life. This is a huge honor for him. So he's basically going to tell Conkling, like, no, I'm going to do this. So they did get that right. They met in the halls, not in a private way. And the reason we know this is that a reporter does listen in and write down everything they're saying. So another thing I have here is Charles does not end up meeting Blaine and Arthur in that hall where they're talking about, like, where they're going to get, money from. That is just unrealistic. I don't think they had much interaction with Gateau, to tell you the truth, when they're talking in this meeting. The meeting has probably happened and they're probably debating it, but Gateau does not have this big impact that the story is making it seem like he did. But the rejection, him getting thrown out, is definitely something that's more likely to happen. Now, he did bother Blaine a lot. He did run into him asking him, like, oh, can I give a speech? Oh, can you put in a word for me? That did happen, and Blaine forgets him every time. The other thing, they show Arthur kind of like out and about. He actually really just sat in New York in his apartment. He was a very private guy, and they say in the series, that he was upset about his wife dying. That actually did crush him. It was something that really put him down, and he was looking for purpose, and this was part of it. And he does not save Charles Gateau from a bar. That's just unrealistic. Now, that scene does show something. Gateau is being followed and tracked by people he owes money to, and he does jump from place to place, not paying his bills. That does happen often. And they keep mentioning in the show that Arthur himself was basically, they were saying, like, over and over, Arthur here, Nick Offerman playing him, who he does a really good job. Obviously, they try to tone his character to make him more entertaining. But they make Arthur seem like he was the port collector of New York at that time. He was not. Rutherford B. Hayes famously picks someone else, or tries to, and, it's a whole debate, and that's why Conkling wants, he basically wants that position. That is the biggest deal for him in this election. He wants that position back because that's what gives him his power in New York. And this will become a big deal when Garfield and Arthur come, or Garfield and Conkling kind of rival when he does become president. I don't know if the show is going to get too into it. I hope they do. But they do actually leave out a part where there's a backrooms meeting with Garfield and Conkling's underlings. And Garfield doesn't promise that he's going to give the New York port position back to the stalwarts, but they kind of imply that he was going to. But Garfield says he makes no promise. They don't mention this, maybe they mention in the next episode. I don't know. One other thing is Arthur, when he meets with Conkling at the docks. Let's see if I can find a picture here. Sorry that's scuffed like this, but this is just quick right off the bat. I just watched it, so I kind of want to get it there. Well, either way, Conkling and Arthur meet at the docks, and when they do, Arthur says Garfield is pliable. Like it's easy to influence him. And he's not far off. Conkling does know this. Everyone does know this. Garfield is someone who can be impressionable. He will listen to others, and he is very much not. I'm not saying he's not his own man, but he definitely was someone who could be, swayed. One person who definitely helps with that is his wife. His wife is one of his best advisors. So Garfield does do that. Now they show Garfield giving a speech. Frederick Douglass, I believe that's supposed to represent Frederick Douglass, does give off a speech. I don't believe Garfield, I know Garfield gave a speech, and this might be the speech they're referring to, but I don't remember reading Frederick Douglass giving it off, and Guiteau definitely wasn't in the crowd. But maybe he did. But Garfield didn't really campaign much. He did his front porch campaign. People came to him, as they showed in the show. It was a big deal. There was actually a train that went right behind his house, and it would, show it off. So the other thing, they talk about donors. They don't mention the fact this is the first election where you're going to see big businesses donating. So Rockefeller, I believe he does donate to Garfield's campaign. Whether it influenced Garfield much, we don't know. Another thing, the speech Guiteau gives, it probably didn't do much. But they do depict him giving a speech. He does give a speech, but that speech was actually copied. It was originally written for Grant, and he kind of just crossed off Grant and wrote Garfield in. So it's like, oh, this great war hero who's doing us, it's going to be Garfield, but it originally said Grant. They do have a point where they bring up the Chinese Exclusion Act, or the people saying it in this letter that he supposedly wrote. This is a big deal in the election. Garfield did not write that letter. It was a fake, and it ends up hurting his campaign, especially in California. Garfield will struggle in California in the election, and he really will struggle with that letter. That letter is not real, but it does hurt him. And Garfield is in favor of the Chinese Exclusion Act. In the show they say it's for political reasons, but his reasoning from what I remember reading was he believed that the Chinese were becoming the new slave kind of class. They were being abused, and he felt if they weren't excluded or something wasn't to stop the flow of them, that they would continue to be used for their labor and become the new slave class. One thing I do want to say that they got right, which I absolutely loved, was Garfield talks to his daughter Molly about the war. Garfield was scarred by that war. He recruited most of his first regiment or group he was with, the 42nd Ohio, I believe it was. And he knew them. Some of them were his students. Some of them were people he knew in the community. And he watched some of them die, and that really hurt him to see them die in battle. Another thing I do want to point out that I think the show doesn't show off much. So I say Garfield runs his campaign at home. So one way he does this is he literally they have a house there that they set up for. I don't know if Blaine lived there. That doesn't sound 100% accurate to me. I think that's just more for show. But Garfield does have a telegram going straight to this tiny house. I don't have a picture of the house itself. Maybe I might not flash on screen. Maybe in a future video I'll flash on screen because I do have to find it and I really can't find it. I'm looking for my phone right now to see if I have it. But he does have a telegram office where, next to his house. Yeah, I don't know if that's a picture of his house. But it was like a campaign office, so he would constantly have people coming in and out. It would campaign everything in there, telegrams, and that's how he knew he was going to be president. And this was the closest election by popular vote in, U.S. history. He only wins by a few thousand votes. And he wins electorally by, not a landslide, but a pretty good margin. He did win New York, which was a big deal. Was something that really hurt Rutherford B. Hayes in his election. And he did win Indiana, which was another big one that no one was expecting him to win. But he did have a pretty good run at president. He did not have much of a thing. We could even look it up here. Let me look up here what else do I have here? 1880 election. So let's look at an image here. I mean, yeah, so electorally, of course it's not going to show me. All these pictures suck. So yeah, you can kind of see here. Let's see if I can get a bigger picture. Yep, that's nice. All right, I want to see the actual election results here. So yeah, here we go. You can see here, he wins most of it, and he does lose California, and that was probably mostly because of that letter, even though it was fake. But he does win Indiana, which was a big deal at the time. He does win New York, which is another big deal. But look at that popular vote. He wins it by, let's see here. Yeah, like 10,000 votes. Insane amount of votes he wins it by. But he does win by, quote-unquote, electoral landslide. So the biggest states he was looking at was New York and Indiana. Everyone was telling him to focus on New York, which they did, but he also did have them focus a little of their money in Indiana. That was the big kind of driving point there. And the reason New York was such a big thing was it has one of the largest populations in the election. And it probably has, let me do the math here. Yes, it has the largest population. So it's going to be a pretty contested state. And the person he's running against is Hancock. He was actually a Civil War general. He was at Gettysburg the third day. He gets shot. But yeah, they were pretty like-minded, and Hancock does give away the presidency as soon as he learns. But this episode does get a lot right. They don't point out some other things, like this meeting between Garfield and Conkling's people. Conkling and Grant actually go out to Ohio to meet the president. Super awkward, but they do it. But a lot of things weren't shown, which I'm interested in how it's going to happen in the next 2 episodes, which you guys may have seen. I have not. I've been very busy. So next time we're going to go into those. And like I said, maybe I'll make a series where I go through it scene by scene. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys then.